Hi, and welcome to your Urban Connection, Kansas' #1 urban video podcast program. Now, I want you to remember, folks, this is the channel that is often imitated, but never duplicated. And I want to tell you why I say that. Because, you know, when I started this show about a year and a half ago, I started with one thing in mind: to fill a void in media as it relates to urban communities, and in particular, Black and Brown communities. You see, I formulated this program not to bring you entertainment, because there's plenty of channels on YouTube that you can get all the entertainment you want and need. But rather, I formed this program to bring you information and education that would benefit you as you go through this unfair world that we live in. Now, in order to do that, and in order to be the #1 viewed urban program in the state of Kansas, I had to do two things. I had to win your trust and provide you with honest, transparent information. I had to get you to the point where you could have faith and belief in the stories that I would bring to you. In order to do that, I had to do the proper research and be able to document any program that I would bring to you to view. That's the only way that I could win your trust. Now, in doing that, I decided to focus on certain areas. And those areas were politics, community issues and concerns, some sports, but no gossip, no entertainment. You can find that anywhere, like I said. Now, when I chose to do this, I decided I wanted to do it without sugarcoating anything for anybody. You see, as a podcaster, I'm different than a news reporter or a newscaster. You see, as a podcaster, I'm not controlled by anybody. I'm not in anybody's pocket. Nobody owns me. Nobody tells me what topics to talk about and not to talk about. I say things with little regard or no regard to whose toes I might be stepping on. And sometimes I will step on some toes. But that's what it takes to earn your trust. That's what is lacking today in today's news media. That is why there's such a demise in the newspaper industry. If you will look and see how many newspapers that were in operation 10 years ago as compared to today, you will find that it's minimal. You also will find that the majority of the American people do not get their news from newspapers or magazines anymore. They get them from the internet sources, because major newspapers no longer do proper investigative reporting. They have made it a business and put profits over the public's right to know. Now, I want to tell you one thing. I learned when I worked for Cake Radio, which is no longer there, but was a division of Cake TV and was run by Martin Umansky. And Martin Umansky, if there's one thing I learned, It was the public has a right to know what is affecting them and by whom it is affecting them and how it is affecting them. Let me give you a couple of examples. It was Martin Umansky who made a bold move when in the early 70s, he decided to run a series on wicked, wayward automobile dealers. Now, at the time, an awful lot of advertising on television was done by automobile dealers. Now, everybody else was afraid to take a stance against these dealers because of a fear of losing their advertising revenue. Martin Umansky did not even give that a second thought. He said, I'm going to do this because it is in the public's best interest. The public has a right to know about these wayward automobile dealers who are gouging and doing every kind of thing to a non-suspecting public. And he did it. Now, that's not the only thing. At the time, in the early 70s, restaurants across the country in the city of Wichita did not have a rating system. You had no idea what was going on in the kitchens of these restaurants. It was Martin Umansky who came forward to rate these restaurants A, B, C, D, or whatever. Okay? And that was in the 1970s. Today, that rating system is still going on. Now, you will see the results of inspections in these restaurants in the Wichita Eagle once a week, usually on Fridays. Okay? Now, there again, Martin Umansky took a bold step because naturally, when you start doing things like that, you're going to step on someone's toes. Somebody's not going to like it, but it doesn't make any difference. It did not make a bit of difference to Martin Umansky because the public had a right to know what was going on in those kitchens and in those restaurants. And if you will look at some of these reports today, you will see some of your most trusted and best known restaurants and even some hotels. You will find they fail inspections for various reasons. And Martin Umansky thought you had a right to know. So basically, what I do, ladies and gentlemen, I do the same thing. When I cover politics, when I cover any avenue, any industry, first thing I do is I do my research. And when I'm convinced that I have something that will be of interest to you, I bring it forward. And without fail, I can document what I've said. Now, when you do that, somebody's going to be offended. And that's fine. I'm not afraid to put out there without sugarcoating anything, anybody, and I don't care what race you are. I don't care what your political affiliation is. Okay. I don't care if you're a businessman. I don't care if you're a trash hauler. If I put information out there and you feel offended, I will give you, without fail, an opportunity to come on this show and show me where I'm wrong. So let me give you a couple of examples. I'm going to give you 3 examples. About a year ago, when Wichita, the city manager hired the new police chief, I came on and did a podcast. And in my podcast, I announced to the public that this police chief refused to acknowledge or be transparent and reveal that he was a target of a lawsuit in Philadelphia. And that charge was discrimination. Now, if you remember, at that time, the day after I made that public, the president of the Wichita NAACP came forth with an announcement that he, as a member of the 17-member review board, I guess that's what you would call it, that was charged with looking out for and addressing and vetting the police people that were the finalists. He said they didn't never know anything about this lawsuit. Okay, he was one of the 17 members that were on that board selection committee, I guess they call it. Furthermore, a reporter from the Wichita Eagle called me to find out, how'd you get that information? Because I couldn't find it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just a part of my research. That's what I do. Now, did the police chief like it? No, he didn't like it. He didn't like it. I invited him to come on my show because I told him he had a right to be transparent. Did he come on the show? No, he wouldn't come on the show. So let's talk about another case, the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. I've been talking about those people for over 5-7 years about them being in total violation of the state statutes relating to what their duties and responsibilities were. Now, I was not the only person that knew about that. The Wichita Eagle had that information that I had given to them for over 5 years. But they refused to talk about it. They refused to do anything about it. 2 or 3 of the local TV stations had the information. They refused to talk about it. The Community Voice clearly knows about that. The publisher of the Community Voice was a former member of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission, as was I. For 7 years, I served. Now, after I started reporting on my podcast, one of the Republican members of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission, Mark McCormick, started telling people that Barfield is misleading the public, only to have just within the past 90 days, a Kansas Legislative Audit Committee doing a limited audit on the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. And the audit confirmed that basically everything I had said was true. Clearly, after reading the report of that audit, nobody could say that this organization was anything other than not being transparent, in total violation of the state statutes, including the governor violating one aspect of the statute and making a hiring that she was not authorized to do. That was the commissioner's job and duty and responsibility according to 74-9904. Now, so I offered Mr. McCormick an invitation to come on this podcast if he wanted to correct me and show me where I was wrong. Did he come? No. So, ladies and gentlemen, last week there was a town hall meeting with the Kansas African American Legislative Caucus. And in that program, I said to Senator Godot to take a message to Representative K.C.O. Hobson. And the message was this, and I said, it's from me. And the message was this: tell K.C.O. Hobson that his constituents would not get mad at him if he returned some of their phone calls. And they would not get mad at him if he sponsored and passed some legislative bills. Well, as you can imagine, after seeing that video, Representative O'Hobson was not too happy. And I can understand that. Because as in all the other cases, a hit dog will holler. And he hollered. But he didn't holler at me. He didn't call me or text me or anything to say to me that he took issue with what I had to say. No, he wouldn't do that. He did what he always does. He hides because he doesn't want to be held accountable. He doesn't want to be asked any questions because he's either not prepared or chooses not to answer. He doesn't want to be transparent. He doesn't want to put the represent in representative. So here's what he had to say. He says, I watched the clip from yesterday. It did appear that there was a message that was given to state senators to give to me. Let me first say that those who are still not sure or confused as to what district I represent in the Kansas legislature, that information is located on my legislative website. Well, I take issue. I don't take issue with it. I misstated because Ford Carbone, who represents the 84th district, and I inadvertently said the 84th district when relating to Mr. O'Hobson. He represents the 89th district. My bad. Okay? But I stand by everything I said because I have researched it. And beyond that, I live in the 89th district. So I am one of Casey O'Hobson's constituents. I have made 3 phone calls to Representative O'Hobson since he's been in office. He's not returned a single one of them. Okay? So after reading his reply to my message, I called him 3 times since that podcast to invite him to come on this program and defend himself. 3 times. I've not heard from him. He doesn't want to come on. He won't come on. He wants to say that I am misleading and misrepresenting his position. Well, Representative O'Hobson, if you really feel that way, and you can show me some evidence that I'm doing that, you're welcome to come on this show at any time, at your convenience, since you never seem to be available. You never seem to be available for any meetings where you might have to be held accountable, where you might be asked some questions about what you're doing. Because the biggest question that I get is, where is Representative O'Hobson? He never shows up at any meetings, even when he's invited. He never does a town hall meeting. He never goes before the audience and his constituents to explain any positions that he might have, to tell us about any legislation that he is involved with. None of that. He doesn't do that. He doesn't return telephone calls, not only to me, but I've talked to, I don't know how many, countless numbers of constituents in the 89th district who will tell you that he does not return phone calls. And when you invite him to something, as he said here, he didn't show up for the Kansas African American Legislative Caucus town hall, but he sends a message saying he had previous commitments. That's his number one excuse. But he wants to be reelected. Now he's in his 7th year right now. And I want to tell you, what I have in my research, what I have found is that he's not passed any legislation. He's confusing legislation with resolutions. Because what he has done, He's passed 2 resolutions in his 7 years. One was to name a teacher the teacher of the year. That's a resolution. That's not legislation. And the other one was a resolution to recognize Storytime Village. That's not legislation. That's a resolution, Congressman. So if you can't come on this show and provide me and the audience with some documentation as to legislation that you have sponsored and passed, I can understand why you wouldn't come on. I can understand why you would not return my phone calls, nor those of anybody else, because you cannot defend my accusations. And you cannot defend the words of many of your constituents who don't understand why it is that you never show your face. Now, I want to tell you one thing. I want to say this to you and all of the others. I don't sugarcoat anything for anybody. I am not willing to give you a pass because you are an African American, nor am I willing to give you a pass because you are a Democrat. Because on this program, if you haven't noticed, I have taken to task the highest Democrat office holder in the state of Kansas, Governor Laura Kelly. Not once, but several times. And I don't have any problem doing it. You see, my position here is never to be popular, but to always be correct. Come correct, or don't come at all. That's my policy. So I'm not going to sugarcoat for you. I'm not going to give you a pass. And I'm not going to try to cover for you, sir. You were elected. You took an oath to represent the voters and constituents in District 89. And at this point in time, there's very little evidence to show that you are doing the job that you were elected to do. Now, let me just tell you, you're not the first one to shirk your responsibilities. We've seen in the past senators and representatives go to Topeka, who were elected from Wichita, go to Topeka and go to sleep in the meetings. But nobody was willing to talk about it. Well, you see, sir, that was then. This is now. Okay? You see, the public, the taxpayers, and your constituents deserve more and deserve better. We're dealing with rough, tough times as African Americans and Hispanic Americans in this country today, sir. It's almost reminiscent of the 60s. But the difference is, in the 60s, we had effective representation. But there has to be an answer to this question. Why is it that African Americans are dealing with the same issues in 2023, and they're getting worse than they were in the 60s? I suggest it's because of lack of leadership and lack of representation. And if you want to be a leader, sir, step up to the plate. All right? It's as simple as that. Because I am going to continue, no matter whose toes I step on, no matter who becomes offended, no matter who wants to take issue and who wants to challenge me. I'm going to tell you, bring it on. Bring it on. Because I am unlike anyone else in the fact that I will not make excuses for your lack of performance. I will not cover up, and I will not shut up. Okay? Now that goes not only for Casey Hobson, that goes for any other elected official whether or not that be the city council, the school board, the state legislature, okay, state senators, the election commissioner, I don't care who it is, okay? Transparency, openness, and communication. That's what we're looking for. And that's what we're asking for. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in the future, I will be addressing some other issues that are major issues concerning African Americans in particular that I have been willing to talk about, but some events that have taken place in the last 30 to 60 days have brought these issues more to the forefront of me. And you know what? Nobody's talking about them. But we have African Americans on a daily basis that are being victimized by what I'm going to bring forward to you. Okay? So there you have it. And let me just say this. Also, when I talk about politics and politicians, let me just say, I'm not excluding organizations that say they are representing African Americans who are not. I'm not excluding members of the faith committee who say they are representing African Americans and they are not. It's time we take a stand. As African Americans, we can no longer make excuses. We cannot give a pass. We cannot sugarcoat for anybody. After all, you are the ones that are being misrepresented, underrepresented, and continue to be the target of discrimination in every form, fashion. Form and fashion. Wake up. Speak up. Remember, the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the oil. Okay? Thanks for watching. See you next time.